Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking. As always, I salute to those who decided to support me financially, be it through PayPal, Patreon, or Super Thanks. I wish you guys a good day. Now I will start today's video with situation west of Vuglidar, where Ukrainians have made some advancements, and overall situation here is particularly interesting. Now, before I start, I want to say that this is not a Ukrainian counteroffensive. This is a recon by force. It's just Ukrainians are using very strong force at this front. So those operations were happening along this entire front line. So in between Novopol and Velika Novosilka, and Ukrainians attacked all across this front line and achieved some success. First, they have captured Novopol and advanced further on. They also were able to capture Neskuchne. They also committed into an attack on the flank, advancing towards Livande and Priyutne. Some reports suggest that they reached the outskirts of the settlement, but were thrown back after some time. If we zoom in, we can see that Livande is basically a farmhouse and not a full-fledged settlement, not even a small village. So Russians didn't have here strong positions. However, in Priyutne, they were able to stop Ukrainian advancements. Then we go to the Neskuchne city. Again, it is reported that Russians retreated from it. And if we are to look at the topography map, we can see why this happened and why this would make a lot of sense. So this is a pro-Russian map that I'm using. So as you can see, they have control over Novopol and Novosilka. They've lost those settlements in these Ukrainian attacks. And as you can see, as attack carried on, Russians lost control over these settlements. So again, initially Ukrainians had seen some success, but they were stopped later on. Now, if we zoom into the settlement of Neskuchne, we can see that this settlement is very close to Vremivka. This means that Russian positions within the settlement was already compromised, as Ukrainians could easily fire down upon Russian troops within the settlement. Also, please note that Russians could not over-concentrate their troops here in order to stop Ukrainian attacks, because if you over-concentrate your troops in one sector, you will probably be spotted, and those over-concentrated troops will be a target of artillery. So this is why partially the game here is to conceal and hide your troops. But you might already see where I'm coming from. If we look in, we can see that Neskuchne is located in the lowlands. Ukrainians have attacked here across the field. As you can see, this hill is located on the highlands, and Neskuchne is located in the lowlands. I would assume that Russians lost more positions here on the highlands than they expected. So with the loss of those positions, Neskuchne could be compromised, not only the settlement, but of course troops within the settlement as well. So Russians decided to withdraw from Neskuchne towards Zaporozhie. If we zoom out just a little bit more, we can see an interesting picture. I will use this map for better comparison and then go back to topography map. As you can see, Neskuchne and the entirety of those settlements are located along the river, but also in the lowlands. So here you can see. And perhaps the battle for this sector, for this entire stretch of lands, is happening here to the west and to the east of this river, because as you can see, Russians here control tactical heights, and with the loss of these tactical heights, they will most probably lose control of the settlements, because Ukrainians would just capture those heights, establish full fire control over the settlements, and Russians will be forced to retreat. Then on the second day of this attack, they have concentrated their attacks here towards Novodonetsk. Reports suggest that Ukrainians crossed the river and attacked on the flank. As I'm recording, there are no reports of Russians losing this settlement. The reports suggest that Ukrainians were able to penetrate defenses and entrench themselves in the outskirts of the city. I have an interesting video for you that shows a failed Ukrainian attack somewhere in this sector. Unfortunately, it is impossible to tell where exactly, nor it's possible to tell what kind of equipment is being used. The quality is very poor, but I will show it to you anyways. I'm using this video in a way to say that contrary to some reports that Russians were not ready for this attack, it would seem that this is not true, as Russians knew beforehand of this kind of action and they were prepared. So there was no massive breakthrough. Russians fought and inflicted a lot of damage on Ukrainian army, as this video suggests. One more thing about situation in Novodonetsk. If we go to a topography map, we can see that basically Novodonetsk is located also in the lowlands, and there is a hill right in front of it. So even if Russians will lose this settlement, the situation is not going to be as bad, because Russians will control the heights in front of it, and I'm sure this settlement will become a gray zone for some time, as both Russians and Ukrainians won't be able to enter it. Now, the general situation here is, of course, most interesting. As you can see, here is a road that leads to Zlataniva towards Novodonetsk. Now, it would seem that Ukrainians attacked on the flank, perhaps because Russians were expecting an attack here and were preparing for it. Also, I'm sure they are very interested in saving this dam/bridge, because if Ukrainians would have attacked in this direction, I'm sure Russians would explode this bridge. And I think that would be a pretty smart move, because it would flood this entire lowlands. It will also flood this settlement as well, but at least it would have stopped Ukrainian offensive here on this flank. It would seem that the dam is still intact. Perhaps Russians are assuming that they will be able to go to a counter-offensive and use this bridge. Overall, we can see that at first attempts, they attacked here, but then decided to go around on the flank. So we can see they are trying to commit a pincer maneuver. As I told you before in this video, this entire river is located in the lowlands, so does all the settlements. And Russian positions in those settlements obviously would be much stronger, as they are surrounded by rivers and forests. So perhaps Ukrainians are trying to encircle the entire Russian army group here in this sector, and attacks towards Priyutne and Novodonetsk is part of this mission. There's also a video of a tank battle that occurred here near Novodarivka, which I will show you. So this is it. Unfortunately, I can't tell who's fighting who. The footage is pretty far away. I cannot see any markings on the tank. This video is from a pro-Ukrainian source, so of course they're claiming that this tank that just blew up was a Russian tank. Don't know if that's true or not, but I think this indicates that fighting here become more and more serious, as both Russians and Ukrainians are developing their tanks. At this point in time, Ukrainians are continuously attacking everywhere they can, so they harass Russian lines all across the front line. This is a very recent report. There is a lot of back and forth happening, as both Russians and Ukrainians are committing into a counter-attack operations. Some claim that Russians were able to regain control over Novopil and this settlement here as well. This information still needs to be checked, but overall, Russians are not on the run, they are not on the retreat, they are fighting and fighting hard. Situation here is very, very dynamic. Unfortunately, the fog of war is especially thick here as well, as this is happening right now, and both Russians and Ukrainians are working hard to conceal their movements and plans. There's probably going to be more updates, as Ukrainians will not stop. I'm sure they are fighting in an attempt to destroy this entire salient that is located here. Interestingly enough, they attacked east of Orikhiv, so they did not commit their attack towards the general direction of Melitopol. They know that Russians heavily fortified this entire front line. So this is a probe attack, an attempt to see where Russians are weak, but it would seem that Russian army now is nothing like Russian army during the infamous Ukrainian Kharkiv offensive. Russians are not running, Russians are well supplied, and some videos suggest that. Now, this is the end of the video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please consider supporting it with a like, comment, and a subscription. All these actions help to promote this video to a wider audience and helps to spread the message. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.